Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at how to set up pressure sensors within our Link G5 and G4X programming. Now, setting up pressure sensors is something that we absolutely need to know how to do. Map pressure sensor is one of the most basic yet very vital sensors in terms of our programming with our Link. We're going to take a look at setting up a map pressure sensor in this training module. Then we're also going to be taking a look at setting up a fuel pressure sensor. Now, other pressure sensors might be exhaust pressure, oil pressure. You can also set up some custom inputs that may not be defined within the software, so we can set up other types of pressure sensors. You might be wanting to take a look at coolant pressure. Pressure sensors all work the same. They're going to be a linear scaling, meaning they're going to have a min and max volt and a min and max pressure that we have to input to the software to calibrate it so that the sensor and the channel reads correctly. So how we set up a map pressure sensor is going to be essentially the same idea as doing a fuel pressure sensor, but I am going to go through both examples in the training module so we have a clear idea how to accomplish this. Now, where I'm at here with my G5 system, I have it wired into a Honda K-Series engine through custom wiring, and in this case, I know what all the inputs and outputs are going to be for my harness because I've wired it. I need to assign them to my Link G5. The G5 is a universal box, meaning it's not going to be a vehicle specific. So I need to go now take the universal generic file here that Link gives us for a G5 and start defining specific things for my wiring and my sensors that I have and I'm working with. So in this case, we're going to be taking a look at setting up an Omni 4-bar map pressure sensor and an AEM 0 to 100 PSI fuel pressure sensor. It's pretty straightforward how we do this. Let's take a look here at a couple key things. First things first, we're going to go in here. We're in our basics page. This is going to be our custom layout for the training course. Again, I'm going to be using this in all the training tutorials. We're going to move from our basics page over to our analog input page or the AI page. If we click on this, this is going to allow us to program and set up all of our analog type of inputs. This is going to be for temperature sensors and for pressure sensors. We can find that Link defines the more commonly used type of sensors here. For example, in this window, ECT, engine coolant temperature, or intake air temperature, these are pretty common sensors. We have to have them wired into Link to allow the proper fuel and spark timing calculations. We also find things such as our map pressure, throttle position, lambda, barrel pressure, fuel pressure, oil temperature, exhaust pressure. We also find some other additional things, fuel temperature, math meter. So we have the ability to go in and set up these essentially predefined common type of sensors in the software. We also have the ability to set up other types of generic pressure or temperature sensors. So for example, we have GP pressure, general purpose pressure. We can give this a custom name and set our calibration details if we want to set up something that's not found already predefined in the software. So if we want to do coolant pressure, that's not something that we find in the software here in our various options. We can add that in here, and same thing with temperature. Maybe you want to go in and have a differential temperature for your rear differential. You can go in and put a temperature sensor in the differential to monitor your differential temperature for racing conditions. You could set the label here and go through and program that. What we're going to cover here in our analog inputs, again, is our pressure sensor inputs, and specifically map pressure sensor, which is our window right here, and fuel pressure. Again, we can add in all additional sensors and fill up as many channels as we like, as long as we have enough inputs available for the Link. But this is where we're going to program and set up all of the analog inputs. Now, let's take a look at setting up our map pressure sensor. Now, I happen to have the wiring schematic for the wiring harness I made for my vehicle and my G5, so I know where I've wired certain features and functions, sensors, and all that information. I have my map pressure sensor found on analog input 2, and we're going to be assigning that here under our source. This assigns where we've wired our actual sensor to. Then I have my fuel pressure sensor wired to analog input 3. So I'm going to be assigning that here under the source. Again, the source is going to be what input we've wired our sensors into for the Link. Now, if you didn't know, for example, where you have something wired on the Link, there is a way to tell. So if you didn't get a wiring schematic for your vehicle, if you're unsure of where something's wired, you are able to do a check on this. We're going to be using our runtime value option to see the raw analog voltage and figure out potentially where your sensor is wired to, whatever you're trying to assign. If we go up here under tuning, we have this option here. We can click F12, which is the keystroke to bring up our list, or we can go down here for the drop down. If we click in our runtime values, this is going to show us all of the runtime values for every single channel coming in to the link in terms of our sensor wiring. It's also going to show us any features or functions that are present. We can see all kinds of information in here. So for example, we can see what the E throttle is doing, or the knock control is doing, or the variable valve timing. Again, there's a tremendous amount of information that can be found in our runtime values. It's super valuable window here to take a look at. Now specifically, because we're talking about our analog input types, I want to go in and figure out which channel, let's say if I didn't know this, which channel is associated to the sensor that I'm trying to configure so that I'm able to assign that correctly under the source. If the source isn't assigned correctly, the sensor that we're trying to work with here in the software will not read correctly, and it's just going to give you issues. So if we go back here a little bit and we scroll to the window here called analog, this allows us to take a look at all of the analog inputs. Now we can see here for my G5 box, analog input, I have analog 1 through 14. We can see analog 4 through 14 has 0 volts in it because these aren't doing anything. Right now I've only had 3 analog inputs that I've configured for various different options, so pressure sensors and a wideband. We're going to talk about that in another training module, setting that up. So in this case,
thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.